Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today I'm going to be talking about The Tragedy of Lord George by Penhaligon. So stay tuned for that. And if you like the content, guys, hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Now, when I was in London, I did pick up a sample pack from Penhaligon. This has 10 fragrances in it, and I believe it was only about 25 pounds. So I've been slowly working my way through testing some of the fragrances, and today I'm going to be talking about The Tragedy of Lord George. Now, this one is interesting because it has a very cool bottle, but also it has an interesting set of notes to me. So I like boozy fragrances, and I really wanted to try this one because it does have a brandy note, apparently. What I find especially interesting about this one is that I don't really get that much of the brandy. So on the opening, this one is actually very, very soapy. It's quite sharp, actually. And it does smell nice. It smells crisp and clean. And there is a very sharp, kind of like you're smelling a bar of soap. A very luxurious, very high quality bar of soap. I don't really get much of the brandy. I don't really get much booziness. And there is a little bit of a foaminess and a woody base to go along with that soapiness. But this is a prominently soapy fragrance. About 15 to 20 minutes into the fragrance, I get something that could be described as a little bit boozy, but it is still dominated by this very soapy vibe. It's not as sharp. The sharpness definitely tones down, and it becomes a much smoother, high quality soapy fragrance. And I will say that I do enjoy it. It is nice, and I really like these kinds of soapy fragrances. And if you compare this to something like Mugler cologne, I actually think this is actually a much higher quality fragrance. And I think this one can be gotten on discounters for a pretty good price. So it's not really expensive. It is definitely more expensive than the Mugler, but it is a fairly inexpensive fragrance. Now, ultimately, it is something that is mostly just soapy. I get a bit of the woodsiness. I definitely, in the dry down, get some of the woodsiness as well. But it is just really a nice, clean, soapy fragrance. I get a little bit of a frothy vibe now and then, which kind of gives the impression of a wet bar of soap. But that's it. It's not a very complex fragrance. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. And it's definitely not one that I would expect based on the notes that are given for this fragrance. I don't really get any booziness, as I mentioned. I believe there's tonka bean as well. Don't really get any sweetness either. There are some sort of woodsy qualities with this one. Now, this one does seem to have a little bit better performance than, say, something like Mugler, which I mentioned before, which at best I would get about 4 hours. It is fairly soft. This one is a little bit soft. It's not as beastly as some of the other fragrances that I've tried from here, but I definitely get around the 6-hour mark. So this one does last a little bit longer, although the longevity definitely leaves a little bit to be lacked, especially given that this is something I could see that's easy to wear to work, as it is a very inoffensive, clean smelling fragrance. And so it doesn't last or won't last the whole workday. I find it always a little bit hard. That's the thing that I also don't like about this set, is that I do find it a little bit hard with the dabbers to get as much of an impression of the fragrance. I find that longevity and projection usually isn't as good as, say, a spray-on, but that's just personal experience. Anyways, I do think this is a nice one if you want to wear a nice clean fragrance. This is one that would work good spring, summer, something that keeps you smelling soapy and clean. Good for the work or a formal occasion. I wouldn't wear this to a super formal occasion, although it is a very classy, soapy fragrance. I feel like it would leave something to be desired. It does smell nice and clean, and so professional settings it works, but a more formal occasion, if you want something either more gentlemanly and something that stands out a little bit more, I don't think that this would really be the fragrance to do that, but it is definitely an easy to wear, pleasant fragrance. I do like this one, as I mentioned, and I think it is a good soapy fragrance if that's what you're on the market for, but it also isn't one that has a lot of wow factor for me. So I do think that this one here is a fairly versatile fragrance that can be used in a lot of occasions, good for warmer weather, but ultimately it is a soapy fragrance among many, many soapy fragrances. It is definitely a little bit on the higher end, a little bit more luxurious, and it still can be gotten for a fairly inexpensive price, making it perhaps worthwhile. But I would recommend checking this out first and definitely being aware that the brandy note, to my nose, is nowhere to be found. This is a soapy, woody fragrance more than anything else. If you do get the chance, there is this sample set, which can certainly be picked up, and you can try this along with others for a pretty good price. But ultimately, I think that is all I have for this one today. Nice, quality, luxurious, soapy fragrance from Penhaligons. And leave a comment down below. What is your favorite soapy fragrance? And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.